Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Molly and I'm the Content and Communications Manager here at Morepay, and it's my absolute pleasure to introduce the topic for you today, which is neurodiversity in the workplace. So just a little bit of housekeeping to cover before I pass over to our speakers today. So in terms of the agenda for this morning, Patrick is going to start us off with an introduction to the topic and then talk a little bit about understanding neurodiversity. Sybil will then cover the power of a neuroinclusive workspace, and Patrick will then move on to looking at some of the key learnings from the CIPD Neuroinclusion at Work report. Sybil will then walk you through how you can create a neuro-inclusive workspace and a culture of care. And then we'll move into the Q&A section of the webinar, where you'll have an opportunity to ask Sybil and Patrick any questions that you may have at the end. So if you are wondering how to ask a question, you may have noticed that your microphones are on mute, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to hear from you. So any questions you have either during the webinar or at the end during the Q&A session, just pop your questions into the question panel and we'll get back to you at the end. If we can't answer your question during the Q&A, if we have loads coming through, we will try our very best to take them away with us, but we'll see how we get on later. Another note, if you are facing any technical difficulties, please don't worry, just please flag it in the question panel, and if I see loads coming through, then I know that we've got an issue our end and I'll try my very best to fix it. So before I hand over to Sybil and to Patrick, I'm conscious that we may have some people on this webinar that don't know anything or much about Morepay. So I just want to give a very brief introduction. So we provide payroll and HR software that is easy to use and easy to trust. We also outsource services to thousands of UK businesses. We've been around since 1966, have all the accreditations you'd expect, and we're rated excellent on Trustpilot. So our promise is to make payroll and HR easy, and here's how we do it. So we've built payroll and HR software that's easy. We deliver quality outsourcing services, and all of this means worry-free compliance for businesses. On this slide, you'll see some of the businesses who trust us to take care of their payroll and HR. Oh, and did I mention we are award-winning? We've won the Rewards Payroll and HR Software Product Award in 2022, and also the CIPD's Payroll Service Provider of the Year in 2023. We're also up for a couple of awards this year, which we'll keep you posted on if you follow us on LinkedIn and other social channels. So keep your fingers crossed for us. So that is enough about us. Let's meet today's presenters. Okay, so today we have the lovely Sybil and Patrick joining us. So Sybil is the Product Legislation Manager for Zellis Group. So Zellis Group, if you don't know, includes Morepay, Zellis and Benefex. Sybil is a self-described payroll geek with an obsession for payroll and HR laws, which she uses to advise and educate on everything legislation, both within the team and externally as well. She's also an advocate for neurodiversity in the payroll industry. So we're super excited to have Sybil here with us today. Also, our lovely Patrick, who's head of HR operations here at Morepay. So Patrick is a chartered associate of CIPD, and he has been for over 9 years, and he's got over 15 years of experience in human resources management and operation roles as well. He's got lots of qualifications there, one including understanding autism, and also prior to joining Morepay, he worked in a practice as group head of HR within the legal and insurance industry for 10 years. So he's actively worked within leading charities and specialised recruitment agencies aimed at employing those from neurodiverse backgrounds. So that is enough from me this morning. Without further ado, I would like to hand you over to Patrick to get us started on today's webinar.
Thank you, Molly. Appreciate that introduction. Thank you for all joining today. Today we're going to really get into some deep dives on understanding neurodiversity. We've got a great agenda. We're going to be looking over some understanding the neurodiversity and some sort of definitions around that. We're going to be kind of focusing on lots of different areas in terms of the CIPD report, as well as how that practically works in the workplace. To sort of kick off the beginning, quite simply, neurodiversity. What is the terminology? There's a couple of different variants out there and different meanings behind it. So the term neurodiversity is applied to all. We all are slightly, all are different in our different ways. Neuro, quite simply, related to the brain, and diversity meaning variety. When we talk about neurodivergent, we're talking about those who have whose brains function slightly differently from what we would class neurotypical. So those can sort of include, I'm going to sort of a list here, but it's not exclusive, is ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, Tourette's syndrome, those types of things we'd class, and you probably have more experience with those in your day-to-day people management. So how we look about this in terms of the percentage of the population, it's estimated up to 20% of the population is actually neurodivergent. I think this kind of really highlights the significance in the workplace at the moment, and those challenges faced by the people who have neurodivergent traits. I think when it comes to looking at the challenges that they face, I think we can see some commonality between those points at the moment, and I think when we extrapolate those things into practice, it can be quite significant. So when we talk about challenges faced, we're looking at sensory overload, workplace challenges, difficulties communicating, social interaction, the fluctuations in productivity and the levels, and then mental health challenges and burnout, which are very much rife with people who are not understood with their neurodivergent needs. There's often, I think we can probably see in society now, there's bias and prejudice, unconsciously or not, because of the situation of this neurodivergence being quite often misunderstood. I think employers, as we do as people management, and the wider of the workforce, it's about those misconceptions we have to sort of tackle. So taking that as a context in the broader sense, I think when we look at the capabilities of believing in people with ADHD, it's sort of looking at the root cause of it. And I think I can give you probably more of a personal example about this. And when I've worked with individuals with neurodivergent traits, is looking at them individually. Again, we talk about neurodiversity, and like I said, it applies to everybody. So when you're making adjustments, or you're looking at individuals when you employ them, from recruitment all the way to their life cycle, their career, is looking at them individually and liaising with them without making assumptions. I think it's all too typical to believe in people what they can't do rather than what they can do. I was very fortunate in my time to employ somebody with Down syndrome at the time in my previous place. And even when we had some training with some fantastic resources in implementing his recruitment process, at the back of my mind at the time, there was elements of going, it was easy to make assumptions about what they couldn't do. What can't he do? And during that time, this individual changed my conception about belief about people with neurodivergent abilities. Those misconceptions were just trashed. Now I've always flipped it on the head to say what people can do, because that's what he showed me during his work ethic. There seemed to be a lot of fear amongst hiring people from different backgrounds, and I think that comes from probably just a lack of understanding. And I believe, in particular, this individual also had autistic traits. And, we had to look at how we implemented those things and how we revised those things in the role itself. But that was fine. That's just like anybody else applying for a reasonable adjustment. You take somebody with a sore back one day, maybe take them off manual handling. If you can look at it, applying it in that simple, pragmatic form of maybe just separating certain tasks, maybe change the colours of certain folders they use to sort of file away work, Those significant, or as I say, probably small tasks can make a real significant impact to somebody's productivity and how they feel within the workplace and how they can adjust themselves. So if we just move on to the next slide, Molly. Thank you. So yeah, so this is what we're talking about just then, is about some obviously challenges facing there. So as I was explaining there with that example, is if you don't take sort of measurable steps to obviously support that individual in the workplace, or just accepting that those things are there, these things can sort of lead into different things. You know, as I mentioned, sensory workload over challenges, difficulties with communication, just simple answers between emails and a variety of communication you use within a workplace can be kind of overwhelming. In particular, there's been some studies that individuals from a neurodivergent background struggle with Teams and things of that nature, Slack, those instant messages. It could be quite easy to overstimulate somebody with a variety of messages, which one time used to be a phone call or a walk to the desk and a conversation. So you can look at the ways how quite easily those individual who may be quick to overstimulate can be quite flustered in those situations. Those things then, with the challenges of, like I mentioned, will lead to fluctuations in productivity depending on the type of scenarios they're in. The next slide, please, Molly. So yeah, so as I was talking about, we have this bias and prejudice within the wider community in various different ways. At the moment, we've seen this significantly raise its head over the last couple of weeks. For those with neurodivergence, as we talked about the unconscious bias, it comes from fear, lack of understanding. How would you tackle that? How would you implement different procedures in that? Just again, I think taking it from a neurodiverse point of view, tackle it as you would anything else, really simply. Thinking that somebody, has noise cancelling headphones on, is, that's such a, we've seen that in the workplace, probably many of you have back in the day. If they've got the headphones in, are they doing anything? Are they just listening to music? Are they watching YouTube? Whatever it may be. Those types of little steps can really help certain people with those backgrounds focus and keep them, in that state of flow for longer. Little steps like that can be fantastic. The next slide, please. So yeah, so masking and burnout. So this is quite a significant aspect of understanding somebody's neurodivergent traits and unlearning those negative emotions that can be associated with them. This can sort of probably concern itself with formal diagnosis. So most individuals who in the workforce who maybe over the last 20 years who have entered have a better understanding and diagnosis of the formal elements of ADHD autism. But what you will find is that those who probably in the workplace a lot longer have been the ability to sort of have coping mechanisms. They may be informally diagnosed. They've sort of got their ways around working, which sometimes is led to people believing that they're unproductive. There's quite a common one, which is some people avoid maybe telephone calls, and you find that unfortunately certain managers would assume that is laziness to ring the client or conduct their work. Again, those maybe instead of initiating thinking this may be some sort of productivity issue, it's sort of being able to unmask that in a supportive environment. So hiding someone's authentic self can be really, really difficult. It can cause immense stress on employees in terms of how they cope with those emotions and identity. While they're doing that, it's a case within a workplace to sort of create those supportive networks and those relationships to be able to come forward in a safe environment. While they're doing that, while people are masking these coping traits to appear more neurotypical, it can lead to burnout, overstimulation, efforts to sort of constrain themselves. Some key symptoms is increased sensitivity. Light and sound is often one. People asking for the light to be switched off. Maybe they're feeling sensitive to maybe sat near a window seat. And this heightened state of anxiety that arises from that. You may have seen individuals in the past who've sort of been overwhelmed by a small situation that has triggered them. Employees, as we have to work in a very diverse environment. It's often in offices or workplaces where there's a lot of communication, a lot of noise, a lot of external stimuli. Sometimes it can be the small thing that triggers employees, and we often mistake that for maybe just conduct, performance. And I think if there is an underlying element of understanding that this person may have, or they have disclosed those traits or potential informal diagnosis, then those types of things can be looked at with a different light, going, why did that person have that burnout, that moment of stress and anxiety? Is it pinpointed to lots of things that have been going in the environment? Have they been liaising with their manager about certain things? The way the work is distributed, the style, the manner, the communication, those types of things where just little adjustments, as we do with all our employees. Everyone works differently. Everyone has the ability to work differently. And we do, as people managers, tailor work to and communication to each individual staff to get the most from them. Effectively, it's what you're doing with people with neurodivergent traits. It's just, again, understanding it from a non-biased approach and applying that to their work day. And you'll see the well-being absolutely increase across the board. And I think probably just about the importance about how we would encourage employees to come forward, to recognise and accommodate those needs, as well as promoting well-being. It's probably centred around having conversations, and it sounds as quite simple as that. When you're having those conversations in a safe environment, I think it's about acceptance, and I think conducting those in the right way, in facilitating support to formal diagnosis, leading to those conversations, taking that chance to have an occupational health visit, whatever it may be, is probably sort of putting in those workplace processes which allow to acceptance. So we all use those sort of avenues in HR when it's already got too bad. If you think about often when you're applying occupational health, or you're looking at getting a report from a GP, it's usually when there's been a series of absences or some sort of maybe capability. But if you flip that and look at it in an absolutely different light and go, well, actually, let's be proactive with this. Someone's had the courage within the workplace to come forward, or you facilitated that conversation and explained, maybe I haven't, either a formal diagnosis that hadn't made you aware of, or likewise, they may have approached you to say, I think I might have maybe ADHD. I maybe feel that I have elements of being on the autistic spectrum. Support them, like you would anybody with an illness, or in terms of a workplace adjustment. All these things come under diversity, and the elements of everyone being different is just applied the same. Looking at your risk assessments and how you would approach that is such an important part of that. And I think with the proper education to your line managers and your people, continual conversation about how normal this is sort of breaks away those barriers. So yes, it's sometimes we may find that some individuals struggle to properly explain that they may have a formal diagnosis, but if you can make it appropriate, make it fair, putting the right tools and training to have that empathy as you'd expect, and allow them to use the avenues which we do for normal other employees, neurotypical and the rest of the teams, to apply themselves through getting a report, getting OH, and getting those reasonable adjustments from a third-party professional. Healthcare advice is so much more important than making probably some decisions that we might not be aware of. And I think, going back to the fear aspect, that is what you need to remove. When in HR, it's quite easy, and being people managers, to feel that you have to know everything when you don't. We're not going to be experts in every single area, and seeking advice and guidance through a variety of charities, for a variety of information online, from the sources, from the GPOH professionals who have done this for many, many years, on how to support your employees. It's a fantastic avenue, and it helps bridge probably that conversation about unmasking and acceptance within the workplace. The next slide, please, Molly. Thank you. I'm going to pass over now to Sybil.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, we're going to look at the strength of a neurodiverse individuals. So neurodivergent individuals often possess extraordinary talents, and they're frequently overlooked in traditional work environments. When given the right support and opportunities, these strengths can lead to remarkable contributions and innovations. CIPD's recent Neuroinclusion at Work report revealed a significant underrepresentation and lack of focus on neurodiversity in the workplace. Understanding the strengths that neurodivergent individuals bring to the workplace is essential in building a more inclusive and innovative environment. There are so many skills that everybody can bring, and we can't list them all, but some of them may be like the attention to detail and pattern recognition, creativity and innovation, exceptional memory, especially when it's a topic that is close to their heart, being hyper-focused and intense concentration, loyalty and dedication, and that's not only to their team but to the business as well. There are so many things here that we could list. We could spend half an hour going through all these different traits that help the business. By recognizing and embracing the strengths of neurodivergent individuals, organizations can harness a wealth of talent that enhances team performance, drives innovation, and fosters resilience. Neurodivergent employees bring overlooked skills, making them invaluable assets in any workplace. Integrating their unique abilities not only promotes inclusivity, but also significantly contributes to the overall success and the growth of the organization. Next slide, please, Molly. So, what makes me qualified to speak on the topic? I have no qualifications. I've spent nearly 30 years in payroll and HR struggling with what I eventually learned was Asperger's and combined ADHD. I was diagnosed at the young age of 45. I also have some other traits from other conditions, but I don't meet that threshold for those diagnoses. But that isn't important to me. My CV is more like a local business directory. I was burning out after months rather than years. I was in constant fear, and honestly, I still am, but I am finally learning not to fight it quite so hard. My flight instinct kicked in too quickly, and overall, I had no support and instead was being blamed for not being their idea of a perfect employee. In fact, I was that perfect employee, and it was the employer and the manager that was the issue each time. 5 years ago, I hadn't even heard of Asperger's, and ADHD, I will openly admit, was a very stereotypical idea of the teenage boy in the classroom being disruptive. Maybe if one single manager had an understanding and neurodiverse training, they may have just picked up on my extremely prominent traits and been able to have given me the support in the workplace. I always keep saying that I'm really proud. The only exam I've ever got 10 out of 10 on was, well, it wasn't even an exam, was the test that I had for the Asperger's and the ADHD. So at least I passed something in life anyway. So it wasn't really until I actually joined the Zealous group that I found my voice to speak out about my life. And believe me, it's warts and all. I'm now very lucky to have opportunities to talk not only to my colleagues, but other groups and businesses about my life and how managers and businesses can support and adapt themselves to help people like me. Do remember that many neurodivergent people are also very happy to stay hidden. They don't want people to know about their traits or their diagnosis. And this is very much so for the older generation. Not everyone is open and talkative about their life, but that has to be okay as well. Shameless plug, I'm also very lucky to be speaking at the CIPP conference this year on neurodiversity and ways to help future payroll professionals succeed. So if you are there, please feel free to come and find me, come and say hi and ask any questions. Nothing's an off topic to me. So next slide, please, Molly. So this is a tool that I've used since going on the journey of diagnosis. It was a personal choice to get the diagnosis. I had to know that I was right, or I had to find out, why, because everything in life to me has got the question why. It's also helped my manager to support me. It is very similar to a pro and con chart, but this time I'm listing my strengths and struggles. I found it to be a great development tool for both, say, myself and my manager. And it's something that I've added to as I've grown. And because I've got the right line manager, I've been able to negate some of the struggles in part, or learn how to develop them into strengths. I think it's a great tool for all the team to do, as it doesn't matter who you are or if you have any sort of medical condition. We all have strengths and struggles. From this tool as a manager, you can help your team enhance their strengths, allocate work to their strengths rather than say, Jane did this yesterday, so John's doing it today. You can also then use it on your ongoing personal development to work on the struggles, to learn to accept them and find tools that may be able to help you cope with them. Do be mindful on how these are approached and discussed, and have the employee lead the conversations. Also take it as a positive, as struggles do strongly contribute to burnout and mental health struggles. But by being fully supportive of the whole person, you will actually be becoming more inclusive. Don't be negative about somebody who's got struggles, about the stereotypes that need to be got rid of, as they don't have a place in the workplace. Me, I'm openly lazy, but my Asperger's kicks in and I will find the most efficient way to get a job done and make sure that it's correct. So although this may come as a struggle, it's actually a strength as well. Whether it be just streamlining archaic process. I mean, how many times in your career have you heard, well, it's just the way we do it? Or by using software to its potential, by taking out manual processes. This then frees me up to do more value-added tasks rather than menial tasks such as data entry. I failed at school, but don't take that as meaning I'm not capable of learning. All it meant was the school had one way of teaching and I couldn't learn that way. I'm a complete legislation geek. I absolutely love it. I mean, minimum wage, average holiday pay, salary sacrifice, my favourite topics. But I failed my GCSEs. I qualified as a payroll manager only a few years ago, but this was actually done in a way I could learn via short modules through BTEC rather than a solid 2 to 3 year course. By supporting someone's struggles, you are being inclusive, in turn helping them to succeed. It also shows you've got an open culture that lets people be themselves, as we all know how exhausting masking can be. So I believe that's it from me. I'm going to be handing back over to Patrick to look at the CIPD work report.
Thank you, Sybil. I mean, thank you very much for sharing that personal journey. I think everybody on the chat, and I can see a lot of comments and a lot of emojis going up and appreciating your honesty in that environment. And I think the work, I'm going to actually start to flip it up a little bit now on the work report. There's some, I'm probably going to Molly's detriment, go to a slide ahead first, but just before that, I think I just want to highlight from this work report why it was introduced was to look at the neuroinclusion within the workplace. You know, Sybil's story and those of many others have faced massive adversity in their lives just trying to do their jobs. If it's been a school, education, and the workplace, significant colleagues have struggled in this for many, many different reasons. And I think just highlighting, I'm jumping ahead on the report slightly here, one element of this report looked at the harassment and discrimination within the workplace, and a fifth of neurodivergent employees reported experiencing harassment and discrimination in the work due to their neurodivergent traits. A fifth, 20%, you know, and I think that's a phenomenal number when we try to look at how many people in our workforce we need to support. This report, just going back to this report here, it's looking at how to highlight the gap. So what is the gap between those in our work office and places need support, and what are we doing about it? What are the strategies? What are the cultural awarenesses we're doing within the workplace to support people? Strategy and culture is probably the most important part of the business element of it, and what people management need to look at is the culture around how we discuss these matters. You know, Sybil was highlighting there the one fits all rule. You know, many businesses, work practices have to sort of create those platforms to do the work, to complete what they're doing. But likewise, we have to be able to be flexible and listen to people and actually, as you know, someone mentioned, a variety of new ways of working can be invented around that, which are fantastic. Although 60% of the employers we served acknowledge that it's a focus, the figures vary across the sectors. You know, we've seen significantly less maybe in hospitality, maybe in the construction industry. So the public sector and the voluntary sector are leading the way. You know, these are organisations and businesses that are really pushing the way. So about 76 and 72 respectively are considering how they provide this maybe inclusion via training and cultural pieces in terms of developing a strategy around it. But likewise, as you'd expect, smaller businesses with less resources are less likely to prioritise that. But again, if you think about a fifth of that small workforce having some harassment, then you know this is a really, really big gap that it needs to have some sort of, I suppose, foresight and understanding. And they can be done in different ways. If we move on to the next slide. Oh, sorry, yeah, thank you. Yeah, in terms of the things that we can be doing, so discussion about neurodiversity in the workplace. Or just under a third, so 31% of the people we surveyed of organisations haven't formally talked to HR or senior leaders within their business. Less than half the organisations discuss neurodiversity formally, either through senior leadership, line manager discussions, which is a vast amount of people and conversations that we're not having. Those sort of conversations which lead into diverse or sort of neurodivergent conversations at the moment seem to be on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of they come out of maybe a conduct issue or a performance matter issue, as I mentioned before. So it seems to be leading out of a problem rather than a solution in the beginning. And this is sort of reflected in the report about employees' perspective. As we do, most of us understand that neurodiversity is through neurodivergent employees are more likely to say they're compared to their neurotypical peers, with only 53% of employees feeling that their organisation has an open and supportive climate for discussing neurodiversity, which again, just pushes that fact about what conversations we're not having. With just 38% believing their organisation provides meaningful support to neurodivergent individuals, which I think is a really big touch point about tokenism within the workplace. Sometimes we see sort of maybe businesses wanting to approach things, but maybe feel that they have to do it rather than actually want to do it properly. You know, those things, if they have to have a meaning and a result, if you're going to be supportive of employees and how you introduce these type of measures and training, it's getting buy-in. You know, there's many stories out there, you know, I'm sure a lot of us on this call may be touched by or may have neurodivergent traits or family members who come from those backgrounds. My eldest brother has always suffered from learning difficulties, and he struggled. He didn't do very well in school at the time, went to a supportive workplace afterwards in terms of training. It was a sort of specialised recruitment agency, if you will, to get people with neurodivergent backgrounds into work. But he struggled. The interviews, that was the bit. He wasn't like everyone else. He came across shy. He came across maybe that he wasn't confident in what he was able to produce the workforce. If this was, you know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, if now he was confident at the time, he just didn't disclose it because he believed that maybe it went against him. So he didn't get a lot of jobs at the beginning. He managed to find an employer who were willing to have that conversation 10 years ago, which is a long time in terms of maybe where we were culturally. And that conversation was slightly different. He explained that he may need a little bit of time, the questions in advance, you know, so he could review those and write some responses. And in the interview, he said, look, I just sat there and read my script, and that was absolutely fine. You know, he managed to be clear and concise about what he was doing and what he was talking about. He's still working at the same business 18 years later, and he is incredibly loyal. You know, he just would do anything for that business, and he would always be supportive to his colleagues, you know, in his environment. And I think that just again shows you taking a chance on somebody and having that chance and ability to put those measures in place and say, right, we need to do this. We're missing out on an absolute bucket loads of people out there at the moment, you know. And I know as people managers, we're busy, we're working organisations, we're doing our job, but there is a variety of different aspects out there. And I suppose what this report highlights is that gap about where do we go? Where do we find those recruitment agencies out there, or different varieties of sources of people? How do we feel confident in employing people from those backgrounds? If you don't, what happens to those people? As it explains here, in working experiences of employees, they have a lower level of engagement, high exhaustion rate, loneliness. If you don't support them, just like anybody else within your team, they're gonna the productivity and mental health will reduce. Molly, if we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, as I just mentioned, the lower levels of engagement, 45% of neurodivergent employees often feel exhausted, or always, compared to 30% of neurotypical employees. So again, that's it. In those organizations when you may be doing one task, that if we change certain things, introduce some automation, or maybe just listen and maybe flip the process, you can sort of change that difference and gap there. 33% of neurodivergent employees say their experience of work negatively impacts their mental well-being. That's a significant amount, in terms of how that job, and as it does to us all, is a huge part of our lives. As I jumped forward before, from Sybil's experience, 20% of neurodivergent employees experience harassment and discrimination. I'd probably actually add maybe the CIPD on that report indirect. It's sometimes people say things without saying things, or they will exclude, or they will do things in a various different ways, maybe by accident, but maybe conceived, because they're unsure how to speak to that individual. Senior leaders, managers, only 56% of senior managers with decision-making influence believe that senior leaders appreciate the value of neurodiversity. Just nearly half. I think, again, lack of understanding. This report screams that gap about where do we go and how do we bridge those gaps in terms of the people who can actually influence day-to-day management. In terms of most businesses, some matrix companies with different hierarchical structures, but it does come from the top a little bit, in terms of those ones setting the role models and being the standards about how we work with people in our organization. Again, in voluntary organizations, the figure is higher, 71%, compared to the private sector at 52%. And just over half, 53% of employees say leaders show the commitment to neurodiversity through their actions and behavior. Again, very, very low standards in terms of the ability to commit to neurodiversity. And probably, as Libel says, lack of training, lack of understanding. That's exactly what we need to be looking at. So how do we support employees? Molly, we can move on to the next slide, please. 70% of employers provide at least one method to support neurodivergent employees, with also a quarter, 23%, doing nothing to create a neurodiverse and neuroinclusive workplace. The most common form of support is flexible working, 45%, clear access to reasonable adjustments. That, again, is, as we know, sometimes a little bit vague on reasonable adjustments. What are we trying to achieve through those things with people with neurodivergent traits? But again, making it as clear as possible. Sometimes the employee will not know what to ask for. Sometimes they may be able to show you because actually they've built up these techniques for many years of masking their sort of maybe neurodivergent traits. But having a clear and flexible policy about flexible working, how to work in the environments they work in, and a clear access to those adjustments, simple things can be significant. Maybe the individual needs to wear some noise cancelling headphones in the office. And then we have to explain and talk to the colleagues about that in the fair way to say, this is why I'm using them, but again, absolutely fine. Making it a normal conversation. Only 30% have conducted educational awareness training and raising awareness for neurodiversity for all staff in the past 2 years. And 9% have reviewed them in people management policy to be neuroinclusive. That's the impact it can have. If you're not delivering those things, it can lead to very much underdeveloped and under reviewed policies. I think one of the key things you can take away from that is actually when a lot of businesses now have developed sort of groups, data quality groups within their organizations, what they can look at these things and remove those barriers from the policies, get them involved. Those are the people who have experience and want to volunteer to, within the organization to make a massive difference. I think those are really good initial steps to sort of develop those things. The impact. on the neurodiversity activities. So employers who have taken action to create those environments, there's seen some massive increases here. So positive various outcomes, employee well-being up, comfort in talking about neurodiversity, appreciation of different styles of thinking, huge win for many businesses. Those who do it differently can do it better. And sometimes you do, and you can deliver those things. And again, as I mentioned, those flexible working and access, reasonable adjustments are not a negative thing. We all have them. I have one for my chair, come into the office certain days. We all have those things. That is a neurodiverse approach. And I think just making it normal and actually signposting people to these requests rather than maybe seeing it as an additional task is actually a huge step forward. What we've done on this slide deck afterwards is you can actually read the full report. And I think if you've got a little bit of time, I know we're all busy, but the CIPD have made it really, really clear and really much a very, very readable report to look at sort of this in a wider context. But if you're taking anything from this report, again, it sounds quite negative, doesn't it, these reports? What is the gap? What we're down? But, it's an honest report. This has been conducted in the sense of looking towards changing the future and ending on that positive approach to actually just going, right, where do we start? And where do we start with those individuals? I would look to those in your organization who already have maybe been forward. And, even my own time within HR, I saw a massive increase of people coming forward and being confident in disclosing those traits or maybe various different things over the years, especially on the confidential medical questionnaire, which was a fab thing to see, an amazing confidence to do that. Take that opportunity to ask people, once they've got to your business, well, do you need anything? Simply by asking that, I think you'll open up a world of possible understanding and experience, so you can provide that to your management team. I'm going to now pass over to Sybil, and she's going to talk about how to create a neurodiverse, inclusive workspace. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. I think that's a really good read for anybody that's interested in where we are as employers as a whole and where we can go forwards. So I'm going to look now at some of the things that we can do to help people like me, people like you in the workplace. First of all, it's understanding. So it's understanding the current state of the neuroinclusion that you have. And do remember that this starts from the job advert and carries all the way through the employee life cycle. Looking at demographics on your workforce and identifying any gaps in policies or practices, or not only gaps, but where they're not necessarily totally accessible for people that have traits. So open those up, make them more inclusive. It's not only just offering it in different formats, but how can you help people? Do they need help? They can't read the policy, so they need somebody to sit and maybe talk them through it and explain what it means in real terms, not just a document in black and white. You can also use your surveys and feedback mechanisms, but again, make sure that they are inclusive. Some people struggle maybe with a click yes or no, or they may be inattentive, so they'll get part way through and get bored. So have a look at the way that those are built and created as well. And I always say, by asking, you can determine so much. Raising awareness, look at having a positive work environment that really does encourage open communication, collaboration, and mutual respect. By having an open culture that starts from the bottom up, you will make the workplace a safe haven for all employees and allow them to thrive and develop in creating a much more stable workforce. Just remember how much time we spend at work compared to at home. It's got to be that place. By doing this, you're going to help reducing the stress, increasing job satisfaction and retention, leading to lower absenteeism, potentially lowering people's stress rates and the adverse effects that going into one of these states can create. There's so many misconceptions and gaps in people's knowledge about neurodivergent conditions, and these need to be addressed. Training should be a must for every business, whether it be from your own employees, the bigger specialist companies, or people like me who are just happy to share their experiences and what changes could be implemented. Patrick mentioned about flexible working arrangements. These can include such things like flexible working hours, remote working options, and personalised workspaces. Allowing employees to work in environments that minimise sensory overload can also help them. Flexi working can also include compressed hours. So for somebody like me, I will always work over and above my hours, particularly earlier on in the week, because I've just got to get it done. If my hours were 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, I'd still start work at 8. I'd still work through my lunch break. I'd still finish later on in the day. But then come Friday, I'm absolutely exhausted and I'm still being expected to work that 9 to 5. So for having these compressed hours and this flexi working, it means that I'm not working over my hours. So it's mitigating the burnout and the stress. So next slide, please. Reasonable adjustments. Patrick's obviously covered these already, but there's just so many of these that we could list. But you need to remember that it's up to the employer to offer reasonable adjustments, and also that your employees may not know straight away what they need. These adjustments should be picked up by the manager throughout the employee's life cycle, and the conversation needs to be ever evolving. Some could be as simple as time away from an overstimulating situation, or paid time off for additional appointments such as counselling or coaching or therapy. Others could be for tangible items such as a sit-stand desk, maybe somebody who has ADHD who doesn't sit still, a sit-stand desk, let them burn off some of the energy standing. Or it could be software, something like Mind Map or a remarkable tablet because like me, I've got 10 notepads on the go, although I know what's in each one of them. Somebody might not be so organised, so they could have it all in one place. You may have someone in a role that requires them to attend events. These could be really hard work for them, although they absolutely love being there and bring away so much for the business. Being in a busy environment that's got a lot going on with a lot of noise in a strange place really could trigger overstimulation. So your employee may need additional time off, say the day after, so that they can recover, not just going, oh, we've got the weekend too, because the weekend's never enough. So recruitment practices. This is something that I've been saying to a lot of people, we need to start opening up the recruitment practices. So using clear and straightforward languages in jobs posting, as well as removing barrier words such as essential or desirable. Looking to include what they will be required to do, possibly like a week in the life of. It could be written by a team member and it could be available alongside the description. For somebody like me, if I couldn't tick every essential and every desirable, I would not apply for that job, which actually meant I was applying for jobs lower than my skill set because they would say desirable, a certain qualification. Well, 30 years experience should be enough rather than having a tick piece of paper. Offer alternative methods of assessments. We suggest here, it could be something like working trials or practical tests, but again, have a look at those in each individual unique setting. Even question, are they an essential part of the process? Ensure your interviewers are trained in neurodiversity awareness and ways that they can support the applicants. Because you can have the most amazing person on paper, but then when they come to meet these strange people, you've got 3 or 4 people looking at you, staring at you, waiting for you to give an answer. I could put them into total shutdown. So look at giving them, as Patrick said with his brother, give them the questions beforehand. Let them sit and write. For me today, I'm actually reading off a script because if not, you'll have 3 hours on one particular topic and we'll never get there to the end. That's the same in an interview. And people just think, oh, well, she's just talking too much. No, I just go on a tangent. Providing clear instructions and ample preparation time to let them showcase their true abilities. Consider releasing compulsory questions, as I said, ahead of the interview. And also looking at different interview styles and techniques, whether they be face-to-face, whether they be over Teams, whether they be down to the local coffee shop where that person's really comfortable already. Offer reasonable adjustments at the application process. So application via video or CV, negating the challenges people face with online processes. Now, I've read recent court cases where companies have been taken to court by somebody because they have not offered reasonable adjustments even at the application process. So do be aware there is a legal side as well as the moral. Let's just get the moral side right, and then we should be heading towards the legal side as well. So next slide, please, Molly. This is what this webinars have been about, fostering the inclusive culture. This really, to me, has to be from the bottom up. I wouldn't even apply to a job that goes, oh, we're neuro inclusive. But then you actually hear the stories, read the stories, and people can find out if you really are, an inclusive culture. It requires commitment from all levels of the organisation. It is especially the senior leadership, but it needs to be bought in by everyone. It's the co-workers that can make or break the employee's experience. Everything you need to do really does need to start from the bottom up. Leaders should model inclusive behaviours and ensure that neurodiversity is a visible part of the company's diversity and inclusion strategy. They need to ensure that cultural changes, as I said, from the bottom up. Without that, we will never truly be inclusive. Do remember that just because the business has a positive statement about being neuro-inclusive doesn't make them so, especially if team members aren't that way. Give your employees a voice. Listen to those who are neurodivergent or those who have family members, because it isn't only those of us that live it, it's those that are living alongside it can also help and support you. Continuous support and development, well, this is part of your employee's life cycle. Examples include regular check-ins with managers, access to mental health resources, and opportunities for professional development, tailoring it to their strengths. That is so important. Mentorship programs. These can provide valuable guidance and support. Having a workplace mentor for someone who is just joining the business or going through a time of personal discovery, from my personal experience and from so many others, it can really help to shape that person professionally and personally. Remember, anyone that's going through the diagnosis process or even just starting to put together their life of struggles, they will not only need help at work, it will also have a big impact outside the office. So you can give them positive support at work. It will make a difference and potentially help them in their home environment as well, where they may not be so accepting. Everything, we aren't just a work person. Nobody can truly switch off in the workplace or outside. So make it that place. Reconsider your training and qualification requirements. For example, multiple short-term courses or vocational training might be so much more effective for a neurodivergent individual, as opposed to the long-term, the degree courses. And does that person have to have a qualification for the job, or is it the employer's stereotypical request? Utilising neurodivergent team members in key projects. I think, Patrick's always covered about utilising them within the business. But when you've got key projects, somebody, say, with autism may be able to find that way if you're stuck in something. Might just be able to help you move that along, so use them. Always asking them. Just ask, what do you need? What support can we give? And keep that ask as an open conversation. Identifying areas of strengths and utilising their additional skills within the role and the team. Agreeing check-ins, review procedures in advance and ensure that they're actually followed. Identifying areas of the employee requests more support in, whether it be core skills such as communication and mentoring, or training support for the role requirements. And never, ever ambush them. Never put these surprise chats in. If somebody goes, oh, I just want to catch up, my first thing is heckle them, oh my God, what have I done? But if it's a regular sort of thing, or the way you word it, look at your wording, look at how you request them. Are you sending it in an informal environment like a Teams chat? Hey, can you help me? Can we have a chat? Or is it an email? We need to meet. So encouraging open communication. Open and supportive communication culture allows employees to feel safe in discussing their needs and challenges. Encouraging open dialogue about neurodiversity can help to normalise these conversations and reduces the stigma that neurodivergent employees may face. Neuroinclusion is not a one-time effort. It's ongoing. It's ever evolving, ever changing. Regularly reviewing policies, gathering feedback and making necessary adjustments to ensure that the workplace continues to meet the employees' needs, and making sure that the impact of your neuroinclusion initiatives be willing to make changes based on what you learn and recommendation from those people who actually live within the policy world. Then you've got finally technology. Tools like HMRS can streamline processes and provide insight data, and assistive technologies can also help your employees in their day-to-day tasks. The commitment to neuroinclusion benefits everyone, fostering a more diverse, innovative and successful business environment. So I've got a long list, as you're all getting to know. How can managers support their team? This has come from all the work that I've done, whether it be myself or whether it be people I speak to, businesses I've gone into. So always say ask your colleagues to explain their strengths and challenges and what help and support they would like or need. Recognize when they're needing time away from the stimulant to decompress, refocus, or pull out of a meltdown or overload situation, because they may not actually be realizing that's happening. Be cautious of feelings and trigger words that may cause distress, such as "you are wrong." So why don't you word it? I can see this as a different answer. Can I show you how I see it and also understand how you got to your answer? Being mindful of feelings and fears your staff may have when going into a role that someone else has previously done. Don't compare them or tell them how brilliant the old employee was, because all they're going to do is compare themselves, and it puts their worth feeling so much lower. Encourage them instead to turn the role into their own and to be truly themselves. Said before, allocating works to their strength rather than X did it last time, so you had to do it this time. Pick a challenge or two that they wish you to support them in on development, and incorporate this into their objectives. But make sure you've got clear and achievable targets. Manage to their strengths. That goes back to my previous strengths and struggles slide. Let them help you. They can help to guide you on their journey of support, and they're also going to have skills that can help you support you in your role as well. Use the positives. Allow them a dedicated safe space. This should be defined by the person and could be a number of things, such as a darker area, quieter area, or somewhere that they can totally unmask and let their frustrations out. Give clear guidance on what you require, when it's needed, how it's to be determined as being completed. Don't just go and give them a whole list of tasks for them to complete or ask them to pick some out. Do be clear on your instructions. Manage yours and theirs expectations. Be clear on what the expectation is as well. Indulge yourself and your team on training and learn about challenges and traits of neurodivergent conditions. And finally, utilize external sites that, Patrick's previously mentioned, like the OcuHealth team. DWP have access to work specialists that are actually trained in neurodivergent conditions and can give ideas and advice on tools that may help your people, particularly if they're struggling. So the next slide, or the next two slides, we'll be looking at some questions that I've actually been asked through my time in this. There's no one size fits all, and it's why it's so important for you to know your staff well, their personalities and their strengths and struggles, and how to communicate with them. Because one thing we haven't been through is different ways of communication. So firstly, I think someone in my team may be neurodivergent. Should I just ask? Strangely, my actual answer this time is actually no, even though I keep saying ask. The reason I am saying no is because there may be a number of reasons that they have not told you that they're neurodivergent. They may have a formal diagnosis, but may not want you to know. We find it, very much in the older generations. I've got a lot of people that I help and support within the workspace that have said, I don't want my manager or my employer to know. This is personal. I can manage my ways. they may not even have a diagnosis, or they may not even self-identify as having these traits. And by you going, are you neurodivergent? Are you autistic? Have you got ADHD? Might actually put their back up. It might not be helpful. So this is why you need to know your team members on how to communicate. So I just say, remember, we're all diverse. If you've got an open and confidential management culture, that then will mean that those people will open up if they need to be. But just on a note, if you have these traits or you have a diagnosis, if you don't open up to your manager in the business, then they cannot support you, and also you wouldn't be able to have any sort of comeback or claim on, them not following the Equal Rights Act. So you do need to weigh up both sides, because you can't tell them that you've got nothing and then go, right, I'm going to take you to court. You haven't offered me reasonable adjustments. They've got to have an inkling that it's there. So, next question. One of my teams shows some neurodiverse traits. How can I help them? I think this is really important because everybody's got different traits in life. So whether someone is or isn't neurodiverse, it's always best to ask if you can do anything to support them to succeed in their tasks, to succeed in their career, or go where they want in their career. You may wish to do some research on methods that might help an individual, or reach out to others that said they're happy to support managers with developing their skills or who have similar traits. Be mindful, some people are happy in their lives and their diagnosis and embrace their traits. Others don't want these traits known or may not realise or accept that they're displaying them. Having good basis, as we keep saying, on the open communication, on the supportive culture. Having regular check-ins and things like that. There are just so many things you will have heard today. Maybe try and start getting some of those in with the business. How can we help the business to become neuroinclusive? So this starts from every employee. Ask your managers for training, actively promote traits. Be mindful when the organisation's arranging events or training or anything that is out of the norm of the day-to-day. Starts with the culture being open and willing to adapt. Ask your colleagues that have spoken up about being neurodivergent for their real lived experiences. And finally, don't be judgmental. We're all different. Where can I get information personally or for the business? So there are so many places you can go today for support, for training. There are specialist training and HR businesses such as Do It Solutions, neuroinclusive HR, charities and specialist organisations such as ADHD 360 or autism.org.uk that also have very useful information. There is also the mental health charities that are now starting to bring out neurodivergent sort of information, because they're realising that there are a lot of people that are struggling with their mental health that have underlying reasons and causes as such. But then there's us, your colleagues and your employees. Give us a voice. So that's me. Thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it.
Wow, that was an amazing session. Thank you so much, Sybil and Patrick. Honestly, I am speechless, which doesn't happen often. I think as someone that's been on an ADHD waiting list for nearly 3 years now, I found that really, really valuable, and I'm sure I can speak for many people on this webinar as well. I'm sure that it's been really valuable, your knowledge, your thoughts on the topics, and yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. So if anyone has got any feedback for Sybil and Patrick, please email me afterwards, or just pop your feedback in that question panel as well, just so that I can share it with our wonderful speakers today. I'm sure they'd really appreciate the feedback. So without further ado, we are running over a little bit. So if anyone does need to drop, don't worry, because I am going to be sending the recording out afterwards later today. But we are going to try and squeeze in, if it's okay with Patrick and Sybil, just a few questions, because I can see a few have come through into the question panel. So we just bear with me one moment while I have a sift through. we've got one question that I think maybe Sybil would be best to answer, and it's in terms of offering adjustments. So someone's asked, does the employee need to actually have a formal diagnosis for us to have to offer adjustments?
Okay, so the simple answer is no. If the person is showing traits and showing that they have struggles in the workplace, you as the employer have the responsibility to offer them the adjustments. What you have to remember about the diagnosis, now I've been through this, I've battled them, I've fought them, and luckily I've got out the other side of it in one piece safely, and I have the diagnosis, is that a formal diagnosis, all that means is you've got enough traits to hit the invisible line. So you could have 10 traits, but then the invisible line is actually at 11. That doesn't mean that you are not entitled to adjustments. So it should be for everybody. Adjustments shouldn't be looked at somebody, I'm disabled as well. So historically it was because I've got a physical condition. It shouldn't be because I've got a neuro condition. It should be for anybody to make their workplace a better, safer and easier place to work.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, we've got a question here from Nikki. Nikki has asked, so it would be good to understand if anyone has used or seen a specific neurodiversity workplace risk assessment, please. Maybe one for you, Patrick.
Yeah, I'll pick that up. Yeah, so there is no legal requirement to make a separate risk assessment. I would suggest utilising your own specific workplace risk assessments anyway. These should cover all employees, so that should include people with neurodivergent traits. And if an employee presents themselves as such, documenting them through this work assessment form, and any potential reasonable adjustments that are needed or actions, then it's a really, really good place to go from. There's some fantastic guidelines on the HSE about this now. As Sybil just mentioned, a lot of it is tended towards physical disability, but there is a section on people's mental health which can stem from neurodivergent traits. So in the workplace, if they've not been managed, so a really, really good resource on looking at the variety of workplace risk assessments, but don't feel that it can't go under the same one. It's always good to have it in the same place.
And I'd like to just jump in on that. So, as Patrick says, there is like the mental health side, but a couple of considerations that you could have for somebody is, so if somebody comes to you and says that they're sound sensitive, so the fire alarm, that could sort of put them into like a shock status, that they go, gosh, I can't cope. The hands are over their ears, they're cowering, they're trying to find somewhere to hide. So you could then say, right, you have a buddy. There would be one of 3 or 4 people that if the fire alarm goes off, that person will then be taking the employee that's got the struggles and will be responsible for getting them out to a safe place. Again, it could be that, when the fire alarm goes off, that this person says they really struggle with crowds, even if they know the people, that they can't cope with people touching them. Again, look at the way that they're being evacuated and making it a safe space, making sure that people are aware around them to not push them in, because let's face it, if there was a fire alarm, a lot of people will panic. So have a think about the bigger picture on it.
You can amend your personal evacuation plans as well. From that Sybil just mentioned. So like great example, of fire tests, fire safety examples is that stimuli. Yeah, so using what you would already have within the business to tailor that to someone with neurodivergent traits, really good starting point. And then obviously explaining that to their department, their environment, so those individuals around them are comfortable with understanding that individual's needs.
Lovely. Thank you both. Okay, a question here from Catherine. Do you recommend any providers that can support on neurodiversity? So, for example, like internal programs that can support colleagues, or companies that can support on diagnosis, just due to that long wait, unfortunately, via the NHS.
If I go on to the sort of like the NHS, obviously, Molly, as you've said, you doing the 3-year battle. My ADHD meant that I wasn't going to wait 3 years. So I looked into it. So there is the right to choose. So if your employee is saying that I really need this diagnosis, their traits are heading towards sort of autism or ADHD in particular, then what they can do is they can go through to the GP and say, right, I want the right to choose. Now, I'm not plugging any companies as such. I do have a couple of companies I'm willing to, outside of the workspace, say that who I work with, alongside sort of the training side. But this is for diagnosis. You go to your GP and ask for a right to choose. I personally found that I wanted to use one particular company, ADHD 360, because for them, they did NHS referrals. So then I got referred on the NHS for it, and it brought it down from 3 years through my local adult mental health services to 6 months. So have a look at like things like that. Get them to speak to the GP and ask them, do you offer a workplace occupational scheme that has a GP service? That may be another route to go if they're struggling with their own. There are a lot of businesses out there that do training. There's a lot of individuals like me that have set up their own companies that will go in and do the training. There's a lot of professional HR companies. There's, see, More Pay HR team have got their advice line as well. So, Patrick, I don't know if you can add any more.
Yeah, no, those are the great. I was just going to mention, if you're private medical, insurance, a lot of businesses have that. Usually, there's a free, referral GP access available in those. I mean, just I've got on the question, recruitment is a big part of this. We talked about it today. There is the disability confident employer scheme, which again, while some people may not, like Sybil's talk mentioned, recognise this as their own traits and identify that. The disability confident scheme run by the government, it's free. The material that they produce gives a very neurodiverse approach to recruitment, and sort of free help videos, webinars, documents, and how to sort of make things best practice, simple and easy for those from different backgrounds to apply for the jobs. Sybil was great to sort of give out those examples as well. But for me, if I'm looking at employers to apply for, that is something I would want to look at, because I know they have to not just say, yes, we have a policy. There is certain things that business has to go through to get that accreditation. And if you need any kind of material on that, it's a really, really good source of information.
That's great. Thank you so much, both. I was reading an article the other day, actually, just this week, about how I think the NHS waiting list is around 8 years at the moment. And like you say, Sybil, I'm also definitely way too impatient. I don't know how I've waited nearly 3, so I'm definitely going to be looking at other options, because it's a very long time. Obviously, we know there's a massive strain on the NHS, that can't be helped, but yeah, it's really interesting to find out about other sort of ways, and yeah, pathways. So thank you. Okay, I'm just going to pick out, we've had loads of questions come through, so as I said before, we will try our very best to get back to you afterwards with some answers, but I'm just going to pick out a couple, just a couple more questions. So just bear with me. Lots of really lovely feedback coming through as well, so thank you everyone for that. Okay, I've got a good one here from Michelle, who has asked, what kind of training could I attend or recommend for managers to be able to recognise traits in employees?
There's lots of companies, as we say, out there that do training, because traits are so unique. You can go to some of the organisations like autism.org.uk. They do some really good material that explains the traits. Now, autism is a spectrum disorder, so for me it's Asperger's. It's what used to be called high functioning. There's so many different types within it. So I think you can approach specific companies. I say companies, the charities, for ADHD, for autism, for Tourette's, for everything like that. There are also specialist HR training companies that do training. You've got a lot of people via LinkedIn So as we said before, there's a lot that, I know that I've worked with and I personally can recommend, but obviously not through a workplace recommendation. Also ask your employees, say, look, is there anybody out there that is willing to speak about what traits you've got? Because remember, a lot of them cross over. So when I got my ADHD diagnosis, I was then afterwards going for my autism one, and they said, oh, well, autism and ADHD is about the same thing. Most women tend to be ADHD rather than autistic because some of the traits clash. So there is no exact definition. Just have a look at the different training companies that are out there training people and that sort of thing. I think there's no exact answer. There's no one size fits all.
I think isn't it? I think you would suggest that probably that if you're picking a training, it looks at awareness and sensitivity training including within that program for what it may be, because obviously that will look at certain traits of those or behaviours from those traits as well. I think that would be something that I think I would look at when I'm looking towards these providers. But that is the question, as Sybil said, because obviously it's a very diverse background and people may have multiple situations where they have different traits. It's looking at a provider to support, say, what are they included in the package? Is it awareness? Is it sensitivity? Is it inclusion based workshops? Those types of things. What we start to explore and discover those sort of traits that do cross over for multiple different aspects. Are using as those different type of scenario based learning as well, which also helps colleagues explain what affects them.
Perfect, thank you. I'm just going to squeeze one last question in. I know we are way over time, so apologies. But just in terms of recruitment, because earlier we talked about not including those kind of words such as like essential and desirable in job descriptions. So how can we kind of replace this to convey clearly on a job description what is actually needed for the role, but without excluding, how can this kind of be rephrased, if you like?
I think the one thing is there are jobs where the jobs that you do need certain skills for, they may have to have a qualification. Take nursing, for example. But if the job doesn't, so a payroll manager does not need to be a qualified payroll manager. They need the experience and the knowledge, which you can find out from the interview process. As I said, I like the sort of the day, the week in the life of what are you being expected to do, and have a look at the job. The reason for me that essential and desirable, the desirable sort of side needs to come out is because I would have to tick every box. It's also sort of a woman's trait as well, just naturally that you want to do that. So you could say, right, well, we need you to have experience in this, or we need you to have these transferable skills. If you're looking for a payroll administrator, which essentially is a data entry clerk that isn't fact checking on the legislation, you can teach legislation, you can teach it. You need somebody that has got good attention to detail. They might have that from a different job. They could have been stock checking and checking hundreds of different part numbers that have got one digit different. That's a transferable skill. So have a look at that sort of way of it's rewriting it, it's making it into something that's a bit more personal, that takes it away from the tick box exercise.
Yeah, I really like
Patrick?
I agree that I love the idea of explaining the job as it is during the day in the life of that role. I think that's the skills you're looking at. I think Sybil just mentioned knowledge and experience. Those are the types of terminologies and words that are better than desirable and essential. We just see that it's probably just a very typical, recruitment process to have those terminology because you're trying to hire what you deem is the most suitable. I think, in any recruitment process, CIPD best practice is you as the interviewer to get the best out of that individual. So looking at, those transferable skills, their previous experience, does all that matches, titles are titles in a role. That said, there obviously be rocket scientists who need PhDs in astrophysics. We get that, but let's be realistic and pragmatic about what we do in our jobs, which is just be getting down to actually what people need. Essential. Well, again, as those words, sort of spring to mind that you have to have everything, when in reality, as we know, in many jobs you don't.
And I think just also is the years of experience. No, I see so many payroll jobs advertising for a payroll administrator that wants 1 to 3 years experience. Well, you could get somebody that's got 364 days of experience in the workplace that has spent all their time studying behind the scenes, that would be absolutely amazing, and somebody that's done 3 years that still can't get it, doesn't get it right. And also remove the old stereotypical, well, if you've had more than a few jobs since you left school. I've had hundreds, but it doesn't mean that I can't do the job. It just means that they haven't been right. I spent years temping because I wanted that thrill of going into a job, sorting their problem, going on to the next one. So it's removing the old-fashioned ways of the job description, what was on it.
Yeah, that culture, isn't it? Amend that
Yeah.
culture for now. What we're looking at. If you have a career break, ask them why. Don't just say reject it because you think they've done nothing in that time. A CV is a piece of paper, it's not a person. So taking those aspects, looking at how we can develop them, and bringing the best from that point of view. I love the idea of different types of application process, recruitment agencies out there. If you're in your local area, I can probably presume that there's probably 3 or 4 charities you're not aware of who work with people from many different backgrounds to get them in the workplace. A lot of these recruitment agencies are free because they're doing it voluntarily or from charitable based interests, and you'll get a huge bucket and opening up a new workforce that you've never been aware of.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. Okay, I've just got a few last bits to go through before we wrap up today. So very quickly, I'd just like to point everyone in the direction of our Knowledge Centre. Our Knowledge Centre is really easy to find on our website. So just go on to just Google MorePay, have a little look. There is tons of resources on there, webinars, blogs, articles, guides, and all of it is free. So please do have a look if you haven't already, because you can find some really, really great resources on there, and it's all written by our wonderful experts, just like Patrick and Sybil. And finally, if you would like to find out a bit more about our HR and employment law services, please just drop a message to me into the Q&A panel, and I'll be able to get one of my colleagues to get in touch with you. Our HR advice line runs 24/7, 365 days a year. So no matter when an HR issue crops up, best practice employment law advice is always available over the phone, anytime, delivered by our highly experienced team of qualified experts. Now, we know that you are at this webinar because you care about making a difference in your workplace and achieving your HR goals. You want to reduce unnecessary admin so you can concentrate on the bigger picture and attend more learning opportunities like this. So with MorePay's easy HR and payroll software, you can have a clear inbox, reports running and payroll approved all before your brew break. Our software automates everyday tasks so you can win the day. So if you want to learn more about our software, just search for MorePay's HR software. When I send the slides over, there's a little video that you can watch in here too. So before we finish, you will see a prompt to fill out a poll when we close the webinar. So here we just want to know if you feel that your workplace provides adequate training and support around neurodiversity. So just a little poll there. So if you've got just a couple of seconds at the end when we close to complete that poll, we'd really appreciate it. So that is everything from us. Thank you everyone who has registered for today's webinar. I really hope that you found it useful. And as I say, a recording will be sent to everyone along with the slides, which includes that lovely link to the CIPD report as well. Thank you so much, Sybil, and Patrick, you've been absolutely outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Cheers,
so much. And thank you to everyone who joined. I really hope you found this session useful. I'm now going to close the webinar. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a lovely day.
Bye.